All right.
Share screen, get that happening. And now I can go live. Bam. Randy, I think we're live, dude. I think I hit the right buttons in the right order this time, dude.
That's perfect. I see.
Never perfect. It's better, but it's not perfect.
I like where we're headed, Teddy. I see it here on Facebook, and I'm going to switch over to LinkedIn and see what I can find there. But yeah, we're ready to roll.
Let me do our sponsor message, buddy.
You got it.
Hey, you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. We'll introduce our special guest to you momentarily. We are grateful for our show being sponsored. This show is sponsored by the Elder Law Firm. The Elder Law Firm can help you. I love this statement, can help you keep your commitments to your loved ones. So reach out to the Elder Law Firm in Greensboro, North Carolina, or elderlawfirm.com or 336-396-4551 for all of your estate and elder care planning conversations. By the way, if you're not subscribed to their newsletter, you need to subscribe to it. I'm seeing lots of really cool content. So, all right, Randy, I'm going to hand it back to you, buddy. Boom.
Yep. And so, Teddy, why don't you introduce yourself? I'll introduce me, and then briefly Cindy, and we'll dive in.
Cool. So for those who have never met me, I'm Teddy Burriss, and I know that because my name is right there on the screen. I work for a company called Burriss Consulting. We're LinkedIn strategists, trainers, and coaches. We also teach Google Workplace as business tools. Absolutely love doing this work. I picked up a brand new client this morning. I did coaching with them, and it's so fun to watch people go, oh my gosh, I had no idea I could do that. So that's what I do every day for the most part. Randy, would you tell our audience who the heck you are?
Hey, I work for Goodwill Industries, Northwest North Carolina, based here in Winston-Salem. Randy Wooden, and I run our professional center, which on the surface, you may kind of go, wait a minute, Goodwill helps professionals? And we do. Whether that's somebody with a degree, maybe they've been in leadership roles or a salaried position, maybe you run a small company. We've got a lot of entrepreneurs that at some point they get tired of chasing that hamster wheel kind of a thing. And they say, you know what? I need a cushy job like Teddy Burriss has, where I just rake in the money and just sit back and just collect a paycheck and just really enjoy life. But in all seriousness, we are free. We work by appointment. You can find me on LinkedIn. They hired me to start the program eons ago, 2012, and have been, doing that ever since. So we do some fun stuff at Goodwill that you may not be aware of. Teddy, you mentioned I had no idea. We have a T-shirt that says I had no idea.
I have that T-shirt. It's a little small right now because I got it a few years ago.
The T-shirt shrank, Teddy.
Yeah, it did.
I got you. Hey, special guest today, Cindy Gordineer is joining us. Cindy is president and CEO of, the United Way of Forsyth County. And I understand you're going to be retiring at the end of the year. So we'll talk on that a little bit. But why don't you introduce yourself? And then I'm going to cover briefly some of the topics that we're going to address. And Teddy, you're also going to monitor the chat box. So if you're watching us and you have comments or questions for Cindy, we'd like to see them. So Cindy, why don't you do a little more detailed job than I did in introducing you?
So it all started no, I'm only kidding. So I am president and CEO of United Way of Forsyth County. I've been in the role for about 11 years. Prior to that, I was in upstate New York as a regional CEO for the Red Cross. And, my checkered past goes back to public broadcasting for a number of years. I was with startups in a previous life, working as directors of operations for companies that had just basically come out of their garage. And in between, worked on an MBA. I got an MBA and Albert dissertation and a doctorate in leadership. So a lot of different background experiences, but really excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And thanks for carving time out of your day. We'll get to your why, because I always ask the why question, but some of the topics just to kind of whet your appetite if you're watching and such, and just to give you a heads up on some of the things that we'd look to cover. The big one is community engagement, and it benefits you as a job seeker, as an employee, but it also benefits a company. And so we'll talk all different tentacles around that. But there's some other things going on that I'm kind of curious about. Things like, how did United Way get started? How did COVID impact it? What's the crystal ball look like if you have to blow the dust off it and take a look into the future? And also, without getting into too much, confidential information, how do you go about figuring out, okay, who's worthy of this money? And how do you ensure that the monies are being spent properly, or don't you? So what does that process look like? And also, if somebody is curious about donating monies to help Ukraine or others, suffering at this point, maybe some tips from you on how to ensure that you're donating to the right folks and that it goes to the right places. So those are some things we'll cover. And again, if you have questions or comments, throw them in the chat. Teddy will keep an eye on that. So Cindy, what's your why? You've been doing this a while now. What brought you to Winston and the why for you?
Well, what brought me to Winston was the job. We had always talked about North Carolina as a destination. When our youngest son went off to college, we'd start thinking about, we had family down here, a lot of friends. And so this really crystallized the ability for me to do something that really had a lot of meaning and also end up in a place where we wanted to be. I think for me, and I'm going to really focus more on the why of United Way. And why United Way, not necessarily why Winston-Salem. Although, it was my great fortune to end up in Winston-Salem, not knowing as much about the community before I got here as I certainly do now. I couldn't have picked a better place to be. And so somebody was looking out for me, even if I wasn't necessarily smart enough to look out for myself at that time. But United Way, one of the things that drew me to that was the broader range of mission that it had, and the fact that it really touches so many corners of a community in so many different ways. And those ways have changed in the last 10 years since I've been with the organization. The changes in the community needs in philanthropy and donors require us to keep evolving on an ongoing and regular basis. And so, I can say that sense that it touches all parts of the community in every corner is still true, but it's a different way of touching than it used to be because of the differences in the external environment of a community.
So lots to unpack here with United Way. I remember as a kid, I won't say how many years ago I was a kid, but I remember
very long.
As a kid, I remember it works for all of us, the United Way, or something to that. It was at a tagline. It was back, I'm going to guess in the 19, anyway, it's a long time ago. During football, a lot of times during football games, it would say, and I always wonder, what is the United Way? Now I grew up in Rhode Island, and if there was a United Way there, it wasn't anything that was front and center like it is here. But anyway, I always remember those ads and never really understood until I got a little older what the United Way really was. It just sounded like a nice phrase that stuck in my mind all these years. So let's talk community engagement, community involvement. And you can tick them off in any order you want to. But let's maybe just start with some things dealing with the workers. So employees or perhaps job seekers. What are some benefits that you see to that community involvement from their perspective?
I think there's so many. One obviously is community involvement is a resume builder. That you being engaged in nonprofits or in other community endeavors often allows you to do things outside of your current skill set, or to take that skill set to the next level, because every community needs people who are willing to do that. And so, I can look at my resume and tell you that there are a number of places where it got built on what I did as a community volunteer or community, in community engagement. My first job, I have an accounting degree, and I got done. I worked as an accountant for a little while and decided I don't want to do this. This is just not, I don't want to do tax season. This isn't right for me. And my kids went to a small school that I was doing a lot of fundraising for. Mm-hmm. And so my first job in public broadcasting was in fundraising, and it was built on the experience that I had as a community volunteer for that school. And that really was what launched my career. Certainly wasn't something I had been thinking about. Nobody goes to college to be a fundraiser, but it was the starting point. So it isn't just, well, it pads your resume. It also can put you in a position to take a job or get a job that you wouldn't have had the opportunity based on current experience. So there's one.
Yeah,
A second
and
is, go
just to
ahead.
hop in here real quick was, and I deal with this from time to time, is you have one income earning parent, and oftentimes it's the wife who is the stay-at-home parent, helping raise the kids. And then 10, 15 years go by, and now the kids are grown and it's time to hit the workforce. And they come to me and they say, but I haven't done anything. What can I put on a resume?
Yes.
And so, yeah, any kind of community involvement, I mean, that whether you're paid or not, you didn't go brain dead. You're still doing things and using skills and using education and prior experience. So if you're watching and you know somebody in that situation, don't discount the volunteerism, the PTA, all the fundraising and stuff you talked about too. I mean, those are all resume builders, even if you're not being paid.
Well, and the other thing I would say is it's clear that you know how to manage time.
Sure.
And to prioritize things when you've got all of those going on. So no, I used to teach classes to women who were going back into the workforce after exactly the situation you're talking about, because they have enormous skill sets that they just don't realize are skill sets. So that's one of the benefits for someone who's, thinking about entering the workforce or is currently in it and wants to, accelerate their career path. The other thing is often you're allowed to step into leadership roles that you may not be able to get to within your company as quickly, because every community endeavor needs leaders. And people are not always quick to say, yes, I'll take that leadership role. So you get the opportunity, if you're willing, to become a leader of something that, in your own company or within your career could be years in the making. But, because there aren't a lot of people saying, sure, pick me in the community, you get to step into it right away. And so, you got to be good at it. You got to be successful at it. But there's a lot of opportunities that come with those external initiatives or ways that you can volunteer that can offer a great deal of value to an employee or an employer. You also have to make sure that you're letting them know that. Yeah. They're not going to necessarily know it. Go ahead, Teddy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I'm with you, Cindy. 2 points. First, Dean asked, what's a good way to highlight our volunteer experiences to hiring managers or through the process? And there's 2 thoughts that come to mind for me. Number one is, if you have a LinkedIn profile, the volunteer space on there is very structured for you to be able to say, I did this role and what did you do in that role? You can tag yourself to nonprofits online and again talk about your role, et cetera, et cetera. The second thing, Cindy, I'm with you. I remember all the times I've worked for, I was on the board for the March of Dimes for 5 years. And not only the people I met, but my words, the practice that I got to be a leader. I mean, I had to produce, I had to deliver. I mean, we had a $200,000 event we did every year, which is small potatoes, but it was still a big event for us back then. And I had to be a contributor. I had to manage, process. And, I got to practice my leadership skills so that 2 things. Number one, get good at it or get gooder. I didn't practice English, just, other stuff. And then the second thing is decide, I really do, or I really don't want to be a leader. Yeah.
And those are a very valid consideration that, everybody isn't meant to be a leader. Everyone doesn't want the responsibility of being a leader. That doesn't mean you're more or less than someone who says, yes, I do want to, but should be an intentional decision. Too many people end up in leadership roles and then realize they didn't really want to be there and don't know how to get out. And that's tough on both them and the followers. So, as somebody who studied leadership for a very long time at the doctoral level and has practiced it all my life, it is not something you want to find yourself in by mistake and then realize that either you don't have the aptitude or you really don't enjoy it. So the question was, how do you highlight that with, for employers? And I think you treat it like a real job. So what I often see is people throw a whole bunch of things at the bottom. They'll say, community service or volunteer, and they've got like a little laundry list of the things, but they aren't highlighting what did they actually do there that is a skill that you'd want to bring to the workplace. So when you talk about leadership, and I'm looking for somebody in my organization who's going to have the leadership skills, not really care where you got them. Whether you got them as a volunteer or you got them with another employer, that doesn't really matter to me. It matters that you're going to be able to show leadership in the role that we need you to. And so if you treat that seriously for employers and you say, these are the things that I did, the experiences, and this is the outcomes that I produced, most employers, if they're smart, especially in today's job market where you're looking for people desperately, are going to take that as seriously as you have. And so that would be my advice is, when I'm reviewing resumes, I'm looking for anything that gives me a clue that this is going to be the right person for the job. And so highlighting the things that you learned that necessarily weren't on the job doesn't mean that those are less valuable.
Interesting. I wanted to just double back on something that I've seen kind of sort of heard anecdotally. Let's maybe rephrase that. And it's this. Somebody says, all right, I'm a job hunter. And so Randy sits there in the ivory tower and says, so you need to go volunteer, get to know people. All right. So we're, kind of, juicing this up a little bit, but
because you don't have an ivory tower.
It's on back order.
Do they deliver that? Because I would have trouble getting
it from IKEA. I'm gonna build my own ivory tower. I got it from IKEA. But seriously, here's the thing: is they make the ask too soon. So they get on as a volunteer. Next thing you know, hey, Cindy, like on day 2, Cindy, hey, you know of any job openings? And Teddy, who do you know that's hiring? And that can be a big turnoff. So any thoughts for a job hunter and leveraging that volunteer experience? What's the etiquette protocol kind of thing? What advice would you give to somebody who's in a job search and realizes they need to volunteer in part because it feels good, but it's also a great way to get to know new people? How do you work through that process?
I can only speak for the way that I handle things. I tend to be a very straight shooter, and I like people who are. And so saying, I'm looking for a job. And I think though, I'm going to be able to be a better employee if I can spend more time in the community. So I don't think that you should hide the fact that there is something that you're going to get from the experience, just as you're hoping that the organization will as well. I think if it feels especially transactional to the organization, they may not be as may not help you as much as you want them to. But I don't think coming in and saying, I want to volunteer because I think I'm interested in this and it's not something I'm planning to do just till I get a job, but I am also looking for a job. I think that that's a valid thing to say to an organization. And I think most of us appreciate knowing that and actually are going to look for ways to help you because you're helping us.
Yeah.
I think Teddy?
I'm with Cindy, I'm with you. You just gave me a new way to refer to this. When the moment they think it's a transactional thing, they're less likely to want to help you, or they don't believe they can help you to the level where it's tit for tat the way you want it to be. But if you make it all about, look, I'm here to help, and I know while I'm helping, I will learn. And I know while I'm helping, I'll get to know Cindy more. I'll get to know Cindy's people more. And along the way,
that may not necessarily be a benefit getting to know Cindy more, but okay.
But her people.
We'll go with that.
Okay, the people.
But when you get to know another human being well, they're more likely to, what I refer back is peel back the layers and get a little bit more conversational and say, I like the way you think, Randy. I know a dude that you need to meet. I know a lady you need to meet. I don't have a job for you, but I know someone you need to meet. And by the way, I on the March of Dimes board of directors for 5 years. I worked for Habitat for Humanity for about 3 years. The people I met along the way were your people. You're a previous world. You're what do you call them? Executives for hire. I know a bunch of them. They were really cool people. And when people get to know people who care about a mission somewhat similarly, That's where you create conversations that can move you forward.
Yeah, and there's the know, like, and trust factor. If it transactional, I can buy this pen from you, or you buy it from me, or whatever. But if you're asking me to invest my life savings with you, then there needs to be that greater depth of know, like, and trust. And
well, and if you're
yeah.
asking me to be
Yeah.
maybe be to recommend you for a position that I
Bingo.
become aware of,
Yeah,
you know, I'm putting my reputation on the line at that point with someone else. And so,
Your character.
you know, yes, yes, you know, such as it is. And also,
You told me, Randy, you told me, buddy.
what did he tell you about my character?
No, I'm joking.
Oh, but I mean, yeah, you know, I want to make sure that I'm not going to recommend somebody who's going to be a bad fit on either side. And so, you know, some of it is you have to have a relationship to do that. But I don't think that you have to pretend that you're coming into, you know, being a volunteer with an organization, you know, and say it's purely altruistic on my part. I don't expect to get anything out of it. I mean, I think we all expect everything to have some, you know, benefits for both sides, or it doesn't work for very long.
yeah, I agree. So let's, unless Teddy, if there's a question in there, just, you know, let us know.
No,
But
I'm good right now. But I will add this to Cindy.
Okay.
This is you know, one of the flaws. I'm an old man, lady. When you get to be old like me, you'll understand. Even though you are retiring a little bit earlier than I am, by a little bit. But I learned.
I'm
a long
older
time
than you
ago,
think I am.
well, you're pushing the envelope to retire faster. I'm playing. But here's what I did learn about this: the know, like, and trust, and that is you got to be totally transparent. And the more transparent you are, the more open you are with the people that you're engaging with. And the more you care. No one cares what you think until they know you care. And and every transaction in life that applies.
You can't connect with someone if you're not being authentic.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, that's a pinnacle of a connection point, and that requires authenticity on both sides. So
And it's easier. It's easier.
It's that too.
yeah. Hey, let's pivot just a little bit and talk employer now, and benefits of community engagement from an employer's standpoint. What do you mean by that?
I mean, I think obviously, you know, I mentioned that often I see people who either are coming to us for a position or are already in our you know, in our organization, getting experiences that, you know, we haven't been able to offer them yet, or experiences that we will benefit from as an employer. So, you know, I think that if somebody is doing leadership work externally, they're going to bring that experience to us, and that is going to benefit our organization. So I think there's one. I think a second is they're also out there networking when they're doing this work, and networking is important as part of a volunteer experience. It also is beneficial to an employer that the more people you know, the more you're able to bring new clients or to get you inside to find a new partner, or, you know, but the world moves on relationships. So I think that there's that benefit. I think that most employers really do want to support their community, that you know, they live in the community and their business exists in the community. And the stronger that community is, the better for their employees, for their customers, for their business themselves, and for them, the owner. And so I think that, you know, if your view is any wider than, you know, this, you see the benefits of having a strong community. And some of that is because people are willing to become volunteers. And so having some of your employees in that role highlights your business. It means that it kind of puts a little bit of a halo effect around your organization, because you're making the space for people that work for you or who might be coming to work for you to become volunteers. And some things only happen through volunteerism. They aren't things that are going to be done in the you know, more corporate sector. And so there's a lot of benefits for your company, for your community, and those will kind of reverberate through
Mhm.
a
Yep.
number of different factors.
Speaking with Cindy Gordineer, United Way, Forsyth County, your CEO and president. We're going to take a half-hour break, and Teddy's armed with that in a few minutes. But I do want to get your take, and you touched on this, and it deals with companies. And they back when I want to go back to years ago. It used to be, hey, we have a good product, it's at a good price, we have good service, and that was all you really needed. And these days, employees and customers are also looking at, is this company a good steward of the environment? Do they play well with the community? That kind of a thing. So I guess a few questions, and you can take this however you want to, whatever direction you want to, but for example, you're seeing more employers granting time away for volunteerism where they don't have to burn PTO time to do it. Are you seeing companies encouraging employees, not just allowing it, but encouraging employees? I used to belong to a company that basically said, you need to do something, get off your butt, Randy, and volunteer somewhere, and gave me the time to do that without having to burn PTO. Are you seeing a pivot a little bit as far as that goes with corporate America?
Absolutely.
Or willingness? Yeah.
I think that what you were saying a minute ago about, people are evaluating more than just good product and, good price, is people are looking at, does this organization or this business, do their values align with mine?
Mm-hmm.
And, if they don't, I may be willing to pay a little more for a product through a company that does feel like its values align with mine. And, we don't make that decision about every single product that we use, but it is something that I think companies are aware of and are much more attentive to. And we do have a lot of companies in, this community and in other communities I've been in that encourage their employees to be volunteers, who make the time for it without having to, take PTO time to do so. And I think for a lot of the reasons that we've already talked about, the benefits to the company and to the community for having that. And, money is important. It is what allows a lot of these programs to move. So, I don't want to diminish that, but time is also incredibly valuable. And so, there are things that money can't buy. It can't buy more time. And having people who are willing to, because believe me, if it could, I'd have found a way. I think we all would have. But, there are things that we need more people to actually lift in a community. And the way you can do that is through the time that others are willing to volunteer. So there are a lot of companies that are doing that. Many of them have it as part of their corporate responsibility or social responsibility goals around seeing volunteerism in their employee base.
When
Teddy?
Burriss Consulting was founded, my boss, who I sleep with, said, we will give away as much time as we can give away every week. And initially we called it a 50-50 business. For every hour I got paid, I gave an hour away. And here's the words, with no expectations. And Randy knows this. I've been volunteering in the job support world since 2011.
Yep.
A lot of hours every week with no expectations. And just what you said, Cindy, I see how a little bit of my time can impact someone's life in a positive way. Mm-hmm. I also see how when those people's lives are impacted in a positive way, what the impact is on the community. And as you said, I'm going to use my words to paraphrase what you said, the richer a community is for lots of ways, the better it is for the community and the businesses in that community.
And for you to make sure that you have more economic development in your community. I mean, that is something that companies that are thinking about moving to a new area look at is there a robust community system here? And, does the community support itself? Because that's where we want to be. And so, there's a lot of attractive factors that come through having a system that is, that community members are investing in their own community with time.
Teddy, we're half past. It's time
Yep.
for
So, hey.
our half past break.
So good, buddy. Hey, we're right on top of it, aren't we? Thank you for the reminder. Hey, you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy, and our special guest today is Cindy Gordineer from United Way of Forsyth County. Really cool conversation. Conversation with Randy and Teddy is supported by the Elder Law Firm out of Greensboro, North Carolina. Another tagline they shared with me is, who's important to you and how do you plan to honor your responsibilities to them? These are some of the things that are important to the Elder Law Firm as well. So look them up in Greensboro, look them up online, the Elder Law Firm, or call them 336-396-4551. And I'm going to repeat, not because they asked me, but because I get their newsletter. Go to their website and get their newsletter. Really rich and good stuff about Elder Law. Randy, back to you, buddy.
Hey, let's, you mentioned a phrase called strategic volunteering. Strategic volunteering. And so I'll not put words in your mouth, but I'll kind of lead the witness a little bit here. I guess as I would say, because I can, but as I would kind of look at it, on the one hand, you can say, I want to follow my passion. I love dogs, for example, or I love working with kids or whatever. And so I'm going to focus on that. And I don't care what I do for, let's say, Humane Society. I just want to be involved with animals, let's say. Or maybe is the strategic piece saying, okay, I need to develop certain skills, and this, whether I have a passion for the organization as much, it may be secondary, and more so looking at saying, okay, I can develop certain skills within this other nonprofit. I don't think it has to be an either or, but where do you put more of the weight on those two things, the passion versus the strategic part of it?
Well, I think you're right. It doesn't have to be an either or. I think that you can find opportunities within the things you're passionate about. And in fact, I think that you need to, because other than that, you're doing because you feel like you should, not because you really care. And you're not going to be able to do that for very long. And then it's going to just feel like a job instead of something that you're doing out of, love for the mission of the organization. And I think, I think it depends. Are you looking to use your volunteering as a step up for a better job or to get a job, or are you, is it something you're doing as a way to give back to the community, but you have a position that you like and you're happy where you are, and you're really not necessarily looking at volunteering as a growth in your skill sets, but as a way to give back to something you care about. And so, I think every person who's considering it is in a different place in their life, and what they want to get out of it. We have lots of volunteers who do great things for us, but they're not really trying to leverage it into a better job or to a new job or anything like that. They're just doing it because they really care about our community and about our mission and what we do, and we need them. Very, very much. There are others who are, thinking about, how do I use this more strategically to advance, a career or something, my opportunities in the community. And so they may be looking for something different. So I do think some of it is about, where are you and what is it you want to get out of it? But I would say you don't want to volunteer for an organization in any capacity that you don't care about its mission, because then you might as well just take a job you hate and do it for nothing. And that's not going to feel very fun for very long.
I think we've all been there at some point, or at least consider that. So is it better, or what's your take on this? If I want to get involved in volunteering, should I spend a little bit of time with a bunch of volunteer opportunities, or should I devote more time into one or maybe two organizations? How would an employer view that? What's your take? Do you have people that just give an hour or two a month, or do you really hope and kind of expect a little more commitment? What's your thought on that?
I think it depends on what you come in for and, what you're going to do. Some things, an hour to a month is fine to accomplish what it is at the level of volunteering that you're doing. I will say, one of the things that, I think about a lot, honestly, and is sometimes we'll have a company call us and they'll say, well, we want to, send 400 people over to do something for an hour or somewhere. And I'm thinking, boy, I wish they would give us only 40 of them, but give us 10 hours of each of them so that they could actually work with a student who's struggling in reading or something like that, 10 hours would be a commitment that would allow them maybe to, move needle a little bit on their reading capacity, where, lots of people for 1 hour, it's a lot harder to find something that is going to really be rich with opportunity for the person that, you're going to be working with. And so, I think there's room for both, but changing a life takes some time and takes some commitment on the part of a volunteer to keep showing up regularly to support somebody who's, struggling for whatever reason in whatever capacity. And so there's the people that are willing to do that, to make that kind of longer term commitment to something that's very regular. I think those people are worth their weight in gold.
You asked, or you not asked, but you and I were talking the other day before the show. And one of the takeaways I had from our conversation, and you've studied leadership at the doctorate level. So, you know the topic, but it deals with developing leaders. And could you expand on that a little bit? What you mean by developing leaders and how nonprofit volunteerism can kind of play into that? Maybe we don't know what we don't know, kind of a thing, until we experience it.
There's a million ways to develop leaders.
Yeah.
But one of the benefits of the nonprofit world is that there's never enough people to do things. You're always short on resources, including people. And so the opportunity to try something new is there in a way that it isn't in the corporate or for-profit setting. And so I'll give you an example. I've built an entire career on this, to be honest with you. And I'll give you an example. So when I started my career, I told you I went, I was an accountant, but then I went back and took a job as a fundraiser and didn't, I knew about this much about it, but I knew how to work hard. And so I did that for about 9 months and I was pretty successful. Well, then they offered me a job at the next level. And maybe about 1.5 years or 2 years in, my boss came in and he said to me, "What do you know about sales?" And I said, "Give the customer what they want, charge them accordingly." And he said, "Could you take over the sales department?" And I said, "On that, honestly?" And he said, "You get it. You just get it." And I said, "All right, you got to give me a couple of weeks." And I went out and talked to every salesperson I knew and I read a couple books and I, did a little, but I did come at it from an outside perspective. We doubled our revenue in the next year by just making a few changes that others hadn't thought of because they were in the middle of it. So I did that. Well, then the person who was running our major gift program was leaving. And I said, I would consider taking on major gifts. Well, it's a nonprofit. You don't have a line of depth of people that have been doing this. You have one person, they're leaving. You got somebody who's been successful. Okay, take over major gifts. Now I'm out talking to major donors. So as long as I was willing to keep saying, I'll do that, and then making sure that I was going to be successful at it, opportunities kept coming my way. Now, my husband has always worked in a very large corporate environment. He's a programmer. He didn't one day get up and say, "I think I'd like to try HR." And they said, "Go ahead, because we don't have enough people over there." It just isn't that opportunity. So your chances to say, "I want to try something new," are a lot less limited in a nonprofit where you're really struggling to have enough depth at every position. And so, I certainly didn't come out of my college career saying, "I think I'm going to be a CEO in nonprofits as a career path," but I just worked my way up and the opportunities kept being there in front of me in a way that they wouldn't be in many other sectors. So the leadership development path, I think, is wider in the nonprofit sector, or can be.
Sure. Sure. Teddy, if you want to jump in with a question,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
I do.
I'm going to
So-
pivot to talking more about United Way and how United Way operates and so forth. But yeah,
So-
Teddy, what you have?
Lisa asked, and I missed this part because I wasn't actively listening, Randy, so please don't school me after we talked about that already. Did you write a book, Cindy?
No, I did not write a book.
You read a bunch of books. That's what I heard. So
I read
was-
a bunch of books. Yes.
Yeah. So, on the
That was
context,
a lot easier than writing one.
I know, yeah. And then here, Lisa also asked this question, which I think is interesting. How do you get executive management on board to do volunteerism, to create a program where you allow or encourage your people to go help? How do you get a company to change that mindset? I think you've already talked about lots of pieces of that.
Yeah, I think some of it is, depending on the leadership showing, typically I find if you can show data, if you can say, here's data, these are the studies, and this is what they're showing. And, it's hard to argue with data. Now, I mean, people will and have, but, it's not, I think, which is, an opinion and very subjective, but here's what the studies show about that kind of engagement in the community. And also, I think you have to stop and think about what kind of company are you in, and what would be maybe more specific benefits for your company. Now, if you're running a company that has a production line, you can't have people just step off the production line. I mean, that isn't, so that really is going to be a lot more difficult sales pitch to a community or a corporate leader than if it's something where people can, have a little more flexibility. So, but I think you have to look at your company and think about, so if most of our customers are local, we are not a global or national sales firm, company, but we are really relying on the local market. The more people who know us locally, the better off we're going to be as a company. And so getting our employees out there to be more known in the community, to, have our company be known for encouraging that can only benefit us as a company. So I think you have to look a little bit at your specific situation and think about what is the sales pitch that is going to resonate with the leadership.
And it may take not more than one ask. It may not happen overnight, but I think over time, you can change minds. And so I'd like to pivot and talk United Way. And there are a lot of ways we could go with this thing. But if you could just give us an overview of how it started and how COVID has impacted things, that kind of thing. So where did it start? How did it start? And are you tied into some, like with Goodwill? People think, we're all one. We actually are all separate and unique Goodwill regions around the country. So that's an education process. And I gather it's the same with United Way, but am I wrong? How does this all work?
You're not wrong. United Way started about 137 years ago in Denver, Colorado. And, our United Way locally is going to celebrate its 100th anniversary next year in 2023. So we've been part of the community for almost 100 years. But we are the same as Goodwill. We are part of a network of United Ways globally, but we are all independently chartered at the local level. We were, I report to a board of directors that are all local, and we, as long as we stay within acceptable mission and guidelines for United Way worldwide, we keep the brand, but we kind of do what we want to do. We respond to our community. So, we like to say, if you've seen one United Way, you've seen one United Way. And that's very,
you stole that from Goodwill. Did you stole
Actually,
that
I stole
from
it
Goodwill?
from Red Cross. I guess we all say that. We all think we're unique and special. But
Yeah.
we were meant to be locally responsive to what the needs of a community are, and what the needs of one community are not the same as the needs of the next community. And so, our community, we're looking at things, we're focused on education and economic mobility, because in our community, those are things that are real challenges for us. That our economic mobility ranking is third from the bottom of all counties in the country. So what that means is, if you're born in poverty, your odds of climbing out of poverty are almost zero in Forsyth County.
Mhm.
That's not a statistic that any of us want to see continue. So we focus on that. And then education and, helping our students have higher achievement levels are something that, in our community is a need. And so we're focused on those. Other communities may not be. They may be focused on something very different, So you look at your community and you think about what are the real needs and what can we play a role in. And our job is to work with a network of nonprofits to solve problems that are bigger than any one of us. So if you're talking about an issue that is just a single faceted issue, if we're talking about food, well, then that's the food bank. But if we're talking about how do families get to a place where they don't need to get food from a food bank, that's a complex issue. And that's going to take multiple organizations, including the food bank, to be part of. And so that's what our role in the community is today, in a very different way than it used to be when we were known as the community fundraisers. Now that's not a business model that is needed anymore. You can give all night long in the middle of the night in your pajamas and directly. You don't need us to do that. But we do need the ability to coordinate and solve some of these more complex issues. And measure, absolutely. Are we making progress? And so how do we make sure that we're getting there? And how do we make sure that what we are investing in our community are the programs that are most moving the needle quickly? Yeah. So we might have 10 programs, but if 3 of them are really moving things along more quickly, we should be investing in those and making sure that those are the ones that are getting the resources to be able to make change in our community. Your last question, so you threw a lot of me out all in one question. The last one was about COVID. And the impact of COVID. So, we are like every other business. We're a business. We just don't deliver profits to a shareholder, but we have to deliver, money to keep ourselves going. And so we're like every other business. We had to figure out how were we going to work in an entirely different environment. One of the things that we had to cope with was the needs changed very quickly and dramatically when the world shut down 2 years ago. 2 years ago, what's today? The last day we were fully in the office before COVID was 2 years ago today. And so what happened then? Well, one of the things we saw is we fund a system across the state called 211. So if you have a social service problem, you call 211 instead of, not 911 if it's an emergency that you would call 911. But for, if you are looking for, I need help with finding a job, I need, sources for finding food, where's the food pantry, you call 211. And so we fund that, and it's in all 100 counties. And that allowed us to get data to come out immediately on the state and local level about what are people calling about. And so we had real-time data from the first day about what were the calls about, what were the priority issues. And some of them were things we never would have predicted. The number one call that came in, not only in Forsyth County, but across the state, was people who were living in hotels and motels as their housing. They are never more than 7 days away from eviction. And they are often the folks whose jobs all disappeared in that first week. They work in restaurants, they work in hotels, things like that. And so all of a sudden there was going to be this enormous number of people who saw themselves being out on the street. That was the number one call by far coming in to 211 for the first several weeks of the pandemic. We would not have predicted that.
Cindy, is that content publicly available?
You can go to 211nc, which is .com, which is an online. I don't know if it gives you the outcomes or not. We get the data inside. I get it sent to me, and I'm not sure if you can actually see that. But so we review it twice a week and see what are people calling about, what are they asking for. It segued into a lot of people looking for food. Now people aren't looking for food at all. They're looking for utilities and housing. That has been the number one call for probably 75 to 80% of the calls coming in are for utilities and housing for about the last year. So there's a lot of data that comes to us that way, but it allows us to, move and shift resources in a way that responds to it. And of course, our community stepped up and was very generous around the COVID fund that we opened, partnered with the Winston-Salem Foundation in the city. So there's $4.5 million to start directing to those needs that we could identify. We weren't saying, well, we just think people are looking for this. We could see the data and we could hold our local data against the state data. So we had a bigger sample and we could say, okay, ours is lining up with the state. So we can probably assume this is valid and reliable. Yeah. And so, that need was one of the COVID impacts, is how do we shift? How do we get focused on these things that are suddenly arising? But, we had to do what every other business had to do. We had to go home and we had to keep working and make sure that, we were able to do what we needed to do from home. One of the benefits that my background as Red Cross is, and I said this to my board at the time, is I expected our building to burn down every single day. When you're a disaster person, you think that way. And so I was always prepared. We put in a phone system that would automatically send calls outside the building to people with one press of a button, because when we were replacing the phone system, let's make sure we have something with redundancy in it. All of our IT needs to be offsite, because if the building burns down, we've got to be able to start working the next morning. I mean, all of those kinds of things I've just been trained to think about. So when everybody went home, we already had all the systems in place to be able to do it. The building didn't go anywhere, but we did. And we were prepared. But we had to figure out, how do you now fundraise virtually?
Yeah.
We can't go into big groups anymore. So we've got it. So everything was kind of a new opportunity to learn, but I'm incredibly impressed with our team. They were doing all kinds of cool, creative ways of thinking about, how do we do this better? How do we do this in a new way? And then how do we do it well?
Hey, we've got just a few minutes left here. Teddy, did you want to throw one in?
I was going to throw satirically, Cindy. I want to go look at the 211 data and make sure that there's nobody who called 211 and said, take Teddy and Randy off the TV or off the internet.
It was a very small percentage for a couple of weeks, but then that kind of died
it went away.
Yeah.
Hey, Cindy. Yeah, for what it's worth, Cindy, we started this thing back when we got sent home. I called Teddy on a Tuesday or whatever, and by that next Monday, whatever, we've been off and running. So this is show, what is it, 101?
102 today, I think.
101, 102, something like that. So yeah, it's
a day over 40, guys.
101. We've got a few minutes left. I want to make sure that you give us a couple, 3 takeaways, but I do want to ask you just real briefly, with the Russian-Ukrainian war and conflict, and people may want to give monies. And we had Mike Fenley with Senator Burr's office on a couple of weeks ago talking about avoiding scams. And part of that is, hey, I want to give money, but am I giving it to the proper entity, or is it a fraud? So if you could explain a little bit about, and I know you've got the Red Cross background, so this kind of comes into play. If I want to give money, do I give money to the United Way to help Ukraine? No. Okay.
Not our United Way. We are a local, our money stays local. And so don't give it to United Way. And, one of the things that I applaud anyone who wants to give. I've given already in a couple of different, couple of different avenues, but you want to make sure that the mission of the organization that you're going to give to aligns with what you want to happen. Mm-hmm. So if you want this money to go to, the families of the men who are fighting in Ukraine, well, that might be a different mission than if you give it to a different organization who's going to give it, put it into, ammunition, or I don't know. I mean, I'm being a little flippant here, but so you want to look at missions and think about, what do I want to happen with this money so that I make sure that I'm doing something that I care about.
That makes sense.
And, your example earlier, if you care about the animals in Ukraine, you want to give it to an organization that's going to be focused on the animals, not the people. So you want to look for that. And you also want to look for a track record. So you can there's a number of different vetting organizations out there like GuideStar or Charity Navigator that you can look at to determine what the track record is of an organization. If you look there and they don't exist on any of those, then you probably are not looking at one that you necessarily want to put your money into. I think the third way that people are doing it much now is through kind of word of mouth networking. And I'll give you an example. So I'm a quilt maker. I make quilts. I sew and I make quilts. And so in one of my quilting networks, I know someone who lives in Poland and does a great deal of community service in Poland. And we've seen this, I've seen this over time with her. Well, now she's got things going on in Poland that are getting to the Ukrainian people. And I've gone through that system because I know it works, but that's an inside. You guys probably aren't quilters, probably don't have access to that system, but you may have access to other personal systems.
Absolutely. Hey, let's kind of wrap this up a little bit. If you've got a couple, 3 takeaways you'd like folks to take with them about United Way, about the community engagement, what would those be?
We are not just a workplace giving organization. That is one of the misconceptions, because that's what we always were. Yeah. But the reality is you can give and you don't need to be in a workplace. And so if you just go to our website, forsythunitedway.org, and look at it, you can easily make a gift. You can make a gift that's, we take out of your credit card monthly or weekly, or, however it kind of smooths that path. But, the misperception that if I'm not in a workplace, I can't be involved, that I would want to, kind of bust really early, because that's not the case. The second thing I would say is asking people to really think about that our community has a lot of complex issues, and we need to be addressing those in order for us to see the kind of future change that we'd like to have in a community. And that's what we focus on. And, I'm not telling you just go make a donation because I told you to, but go look at the website and see some of the things that we work on and how. But the big problems that are going to hold us back as a community are not simple problems, because if they were, we would have solved them by now.
Sure.
It's the complex ones. And we need all hands on deck for that. And that includes everybody who's listening and their friends. So that would be the second thing. And the third thing I would say is United Way in our community has an incredible privilege. And it's not that way in every community, but our United Way has always been part of the big conversations, welcome at tables, and ask to be and take a lead on things in our community in ways that is incredibly complementary to our organization. And we appreciate that. We appreciate being part of a community that invites us to tables that every United Way doesn't get invited to. And the last thing I'll tell you is I've never seen a community that thinks we can solve problems in the way that this one does. There is a deep held belief in this community at all levels that we can solve these things. And if anybody can do it, we can do it, and we can do it in Winston-Salem and Forsyth County. Yeah. And I've never seen that anywhere else. And that bodes really well for the future of our community. And I want to say that because I don't think we realize that often.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cindy. Hey, Cindy, you're going to be retiring. Just a quick take on, are you going to do more quilting, or what's next life chapter for you? You're going to hang it up at the end of the year, I think, aren't you?
Yep. I'm sure I'll do more quilting, but we just had our 4th grandchild 2 months ago, and our 5th one is coming in July. And so we will spend a lot more time with those small humans in our family. And we'll travel, and, I'm not saying I'm never going to go back to work. I'm going to take a little time off, and then we'll see what opportunities come up. It's really possible. I'll be doing something else.
Cindy Gordineer, the president and CEO of United Way of Forsyth County, has been our guest today. Cindy, hang on for just a minute. We're going to wrap this up shortly. Hey, Teddy, just real quick story for me, and that really, really quick is talking about community engagement. We're going to have in a couple of weeks, Catherine Perry is going to be on. Yeah. She's the executive director for Leadership Winston-Salem, and they're actually in their phase now of going out and talking to prospective 2023 class members. I am a current Leadership Winston class of 22 member. And when you talk about cultivating leaders and, we kind of scratch beneath the surface of the needs in the community, whether it's healthcare, it's education, it's, social services, you name it. There's a lot going on. And I guess my thought is get off the bench, get in the game. And you don't have to stay playing that same position the whole time. You may find something else you enjoy, but the game goes on with or without you. So hop on and get in the game. Teddy, what you got real quick?
Cool. Hey, my story
Yeah.
is I know people who showed their support for specific missions,
Yeah.
and that opened doors for career opportunities and business opportunities. They were
Yeah.
totally transparent about their care and their support for these specific missions. The other thing is, here we got 1 o'clock, top of the hour next week. It's Melvin next week, right, Randy?
Yeah, Melvin Scales, he'll be on. He's going to make a repeat appearance, going to talk about onboarding from the candidate's perspective and what you as a new employee need to be aware of, maybe questions to ask, things to observe to help make that transition, what I'll call stick and stay there. And also from an employer standpoint, what are things you need to be doing and be aware of to ensure that that onboarding process is smooth and effective. And it's hard to retain employees these days. So you want to get it right from the start, and we'll learn more from Melvin next
I'd
week.
also
Yep.
include the component of being
Yeah.
remote and onboarding.
Absolutely. And that's a biggie.
Another
That's a
complicating
biggie.
factor that I'd want him to address.
Absolutely.
Cindy,
We're going to,
thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for
time.
having
We'll
me.
get
It was
'em.
great
Thank you,
fun,
Cindy.
guys.
all right. Have a great day. Bye
Take
now.
care, folks.
You.